federally administered tribal area, or FATA, is situated between Afghanistan and the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province in Pakistan. Education is essential for their recovery and development, as the current literacy rate in FATA is an alarming 33%. Since 2008, the United Nations World Food Programme, in collaboration with Government of Pakistan, has provided food assistance through school feeding program to over 1 million students in 4,000 schools in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and FATA as part of its education program. Providing children with nutritious snacks during the school day helps them focus and learn better.
People are beginning to see the advantages and the benefits of investing in not just nutrition but also in the mind, and this is what school meals do. It achieves both. Not only does school feeding and school meals improve the lifetime earning of the individual and the economic contribution of the individual, but it also encourages equality, gender parity, which are vital for any nation moving forward.
Enrollment and attendance in World Food Programme assisted schools has significantly improved as compared to non-assisted schools, showing a positive impact in a region where education is not considered a priority. In 2016, the World Food Programme assisted over 280,000 students in 1,635 schools with fortified biscuits as mid-morning snacks in FATA. In addition, the World Food Programme is also providing fortified vegetable oil as take-home rations to families with children who attend school regularly. In mid-2017, the World Food Programme supported the FATA Education Department to start a cash assistance program to girls in middle and high schools in order to encourage enrollment and reduce the high dropout rates and gender disparity in secondary education. Girl students attending school receive Pak Rs 1,000 per month on condition of an 80% attendance per month in class. The World Food Programme's annual Children's Art Competition gives students the opportunity to showcase their artistic talent. Finalists are selected and compete internationally with submissions from other WFP-assisted schools. Alongside this, WFP also advocates for missing facilities in the schools and establish linkages with UN agencies and other stakeholders. The provincial governments need to adopt such programs into their fiscal planning for sustainable results and impact. Every child has the right to education. In its works towards achieving the Sustainable Development Goals, WFP Pakistan will continue to work in partnership with national and provincial governments to implement effective school feeding programs that feed the minds and bodies of the future generation of Pakistan.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to another episode of Diplomatic Enclave. I am your host, Omer Khalid. But as is the usual format of our program, we bring in heads of different agencies that are working in Pakistan, ambassadors from different countries, talk about cooperation between their nations and ours and what they're doing for the benefit, for the good of that friendship, that cooperation between the two nations or between their agency and ours. Today is no exception. We've talked about the United Nations during many of our previous shows. But one of the major components of the United Nations, I would say, is food. Hunger is something that this agency is trying to prevent, is trying to eliminate through its various measures, through its various visions, through its various objectives around the world. This is a very important aspect to bring humanity to the fore, to end the suffering of the people and to make the people of the world come on their feet again, those that are living under destitute times and in destitute societies. To talk more about that, to talk about the vision, the objectives of that agency, we are talking about the World Food Programme, or the WFP, a very important agency that is established in Pakistan as well, that is working with donors, including the Pakistani government, on different issues that are plaguing our society and our nation. And to talk about that, we've been joined by the regional director, the country representative of the World Food Programme, Mr. Finbarr Curran. Mr. Curran, thank you very much to have given us the time to have joined us.
Thank you for having me here.
Well, I gave a brief introduction of what the World Food Programme stands for. Tell us, what is your definition of your agency?
Well, World Food Programme is probably not as well known as, for example, UNICEF. But
why is that?
Because we work in the background, we work on the ground, we work in communities, and our work traditionally has been about moving large amounts of food from where it is to places where, for whatever reason, people don't have access to food. But over the years, we've realized that one of the key elements is to help governments establish not just the physical infrastructure that's necessary to do these kind of activities, but also to have the governance, to have the kind of research, the assessments. And so World Food Programme has been, over the last 10 or 15 years, moving out of just directly providing food, although it still does that in very large amounts in areas of conflict, but moving into providing assistance to governments so that governments can become self-sufficient in doing this. I think there's always a need for extra support during times of crisis, as for example, if an organization is doing something original like building a building or putting in an information system, it needs outside support. But we're trying to work to the point where governments will be able to deal with the smaller kind of crises themselves, that they have not just the infrastructure, but trained individuals and policies and governance that are in place.
When you talk about policies and governance that are in place in the beginning when the World Food Programme began, those policies or that shift towards that policy was not that much in your mind. You wanted to feed those that were hungry in collaboration with different agencies, whether they be in the private sector or the public sector. In the world over, do you feel that the World Food Programme has achieved what it wanted since its inception?
Yes, I mean, definitely the world food security, not just in terms of the quantity of food that's produced, but the availability to people has definitely improved very significantly. That's not to say there aren't significant problems, but as a rule of thumb over the last few years, it's fair to say that 80% of people in need of humanitarian assistance are people living in conflict areas. You only have to think of Syria or Yemen, South Sudan, DRC. Whereas other countries, if you take, for example, China, which is the flagship, we used to have a support program there. We now have a program that looks for donations, looks for being able to provide the technical expertise that the Chinese have developed in becoming an emerging economy. And so you do see large swathes of the world, Asia largely, where such significant improvements have been made. And it's not just WFP, it's not just World Food Programme, but we like to think, and we've evidence to suggest that we've helped, and that's why we are now doing that shift and saying, well, we no longer need to be the people just providing the trucks and the warehouses, but we're in a position, all that knowledge we've gathered over the last half century, to be able to provide that to governments. We call that technical assistance or capacity development. So to give you a very firm example, we have been working with all the provincial governments, developing what we're calling humanitarian response facilities, places where...
and you're talking of Pakistan here?
Yes, we're talking of Pakistan. So it's a physical structure where you can keep the things, not just the food you need for a disaster, but all the non-food items such as tents and water bladders and generators. But in addition to helping to build those and getting the funding to build those, we also trained about 5,000 people about how to use them and how to organize their work. And again, to provide an example of how this is moving forward in a very positive and optimistic way, the Federal Disaster Management Authority has now decided it's going to build a facility in Islamabad to form a full integrated structure across all the provinces using these facilities, so that no matter where a disaster hits, they will be in a position to coordinate and move whatever is needed from one area to another. And you know, that's real success. It's great to come in and feed people and you see the immediate impact, but it's even better when you see governments rising to the occasion and saying, well, we need to be in a position to be able to deal with this ourselves. Sure, we may need some extra support, but it's our responsibility and we're going to take ownership of it. So those kind of things are really very rewarding to see.
All right. When governments, whether they be provincial or national, as in the case of Pakistan, or in other countries of the world, take ownership, as you say, because there's been a shift as far as the country-specific program of the WFP is concerned, do you supervise it as well when these governments take the initiative? Do you foresee as well, or do you also time and again see to it whether the implementation is taking place as per the directives that both of you had agreed upon?
In general, most of the provincial governments or the federal government will have World Food Programme on some kind of a committee that's involved in it. And we tend to find that we give advice. We have a good example at the moment. The Punjab government is developing a school feeding program, a very ambitious program. So we're working with them, but it's their project. And if we see something that we feel is not going the right way, you know, we have that open relationship that we can say it. And but no, the world, as you may be aware, has embraced recently what's called the Sustainable Development Goals. And one of the key elements of that is that government ownership is the ultimate objective. And of course, that is the way it should always have been.
Talking about the sustainable goals, that is you've got 2030 as a deadline to achieve those sustainable goals. How many important sustainable goals have been enshrined to the World Food Programme in that respect?
Well, WFP is focused on 2 of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. The first and the main one is zero hunger. And the other one that we're heavily involved in is SDG 17, which is to do with partnerships. And the World Food Programme strongly believes that you're not going to really be able to deliver on any one of the SDGs unless you work in partnership. Partnership both in terms of UN agencies, civil society and government. But our main focus is zero hunger. We know that we're certainly not going to achieve that alone, and it needs partnerships to develop. But it is definitely achievable. The world produces more calories per head of population now than it ever has in the past.
That's true. We've got so much of obesity around the world, and on the other hand, we've got people who are malnourished.
So it's a problem of distribution and affordability, which affects, and that's one of the things. For example, provide a very firm example of the type of technical support, the government decided to do a countrywide, nationwide review of food security and nutrition. We worked with them to help them do that. That has identified a number of key issues which there are short-term things we can put in place to avoid the worst of it, but ultimately it's about the government developing policies and procedures and that are necessary to ensure that these issues are addressed. So we have a country, Pakistan, produces more food than it actually needs, but it's not getting the balance right. So it produces huge amounts of wheat, for example, and in fact the government have been very generous providing the wheat to us so that we can provide it to people, for example, in Fatah and in other areas. But there needs to be greater diversity. There needs to be more fruit and more vegetables. And there's also the cultural aspect. In Pakistan, one of the things I noticed when I came here was, I love my meat and I love my rice, but it's unusual to get a helping of vegetables by themselves. And I even make this joke in the diplomatic enclave that you go to these receptions and there's wonderful rice and there's wonderful meat.
But there's some vegetables.
There's no vegetables and very little fruit.
All right. But do you feel that people are not well informed in that case about how a meal should be well balanced, what a well balanced diet, what a well nutrient or a good nutrient diet means? And is the World Food Programme helping people and societies with understanding what it means to be fed properly?
Yes. This is a worldwide issue. Very few of us think about the inherent value of the food. And the funny thing about poor nutrition, it clearly affects poor people, but it also affects rich people.
True.
And if you look at the increase in obesity, for example, around the world, that's a symptom of poor nutrition. And education is key. But of course, like all good education, it begins at school. And we are working with UNICEF and with the provincial and federal governments to integrate that kind of education into the school curriculum.
When you talk of that kind of education, there are many levels at which you can educate the child. For example, I can understand things if you make me understand in a couple of paragraphs or show me in a book when it's written. But to a child that's 5-year-old or a woman who's not well read or cannot read properly, how does one get to those people?
Well, if we take, for example, in a humanitarian situation where it quite often happens in an area where there's limited amounts of education or whatever, women are very quick at picking up the signals. So, for example, if their child is malnourished, we have developed with other agencies these highly nutritious products which are actually very tasty. They're not like medicine when I was young. And you can see transformations. I mean, there's wonderful photographs of children who look absolutely on their last legs, and then after even a week of these nutritious products, they're back to be the lively child you'd expect any child to be. And mothers realize that and they ask. Also, I shouldn't be saying that we're two men, but women are much better at this than men are.
That's true. They have got much better instincts.
Yes, and they're also willing to learn, whereas
aren't we? I mean,
well, you and I are, but we're the exceptions.
All right.
And so we run these courses, and one of the nice things about these courses is that we then identify women within the community who can give courses to other people, and you know, what we call the training of trainers. And the way they embrace these things, I mean, it's really amazing and very heartening. And but you need education right across the board. It isn't just purely in the poor communities. What we're trying to, one of the things about these new nutritious products, and the key breakthrough was a couple of years ago with a French organization. They were able to use oil to create substances, so the preservation of the quality without the need for other preservatives was key. And they're very tasty. They use peanuts or almonds or whatever to make these things. So kids love them. Now, you wouldn't eat one every day because they're quite heavy. But what we're trying to do is we're trying to find commercial organizations who will commercialize these.
All right.
And for example, the government is helping by looking at the tax on imported elements of these products to see can they do something about lowering the tax to make them competitive with sweets and chocolates, because of course every child wants sweets or chocolates. And we feel these products, and tests have shown around the world, children will get these products, but the problem is to make them affordable for them.
All right. The issue is that you can't work on your own. You need cooperation, whether it be from the government or the private agencies. In a country like Pakistan, you do get that cooperation. But in certain countries, there is a lot of resistance due to one reason or the other. How does one overcome that?
You mean resistance to the idea of the nutritious products?
Resistance to the idea of involving the government or involving the private companies in furthering the goals of the World Food Programme in collaboration with other agencies?
There was a big transition, again, about the last 15 years in terms of partnering with commercial organizations. You know, we were the UN, we didn't want to be seen as being influenced by individual organizations. But over the years, we've developed what we call due diligence processes. So we have these kind of long checklists, which we tick and say, yes, well, they're not involved in child labor, and they're not doing this, and they're not doing that. But what you find, I was involved in this originally about 15 years ago. And what you find is in most organizations, there are key people who really want to help. You know, they genuinely want to help.
True.
And also the same in governments. You find, you know, the official position is this, but you talk to the civil servants and they want to do something. And that's also very heartening that you find that kind of cooperation.
Finbarr, you talked about checkpoints. Let's talk about the checkpoints as far as Pakistan is concerned. When one goes through your website or the different information that is provided as far as your programs in Pakistan is concerned, you are concerned with food assistance, nutrition, resilience, disaster preparedness and response, and school meals.
Yes.
Now, let's start with the very last point, school meals. We were talking about that some time back when you said that the children need to be fed properly and the meat and the rice and the vegetables need to be added as well. What kind of initiatives has the World Food Programme taken in the last few years, and what does it intend to do now with the Sustainable Development Goals for these school meals and to inform the schools, whether they be in the big cities or in the small villages, about how the children need to be fed?
I would claim that World Food Programme is probably the organisation that has the most experience with school meals. But perhaps not in volume, but in terms of the approaches. And what has slowly been developed across Asia is what we call market gardens. And this is about letting the children grow the food they're going to eat. And of course you grow the missing elements, the vegetables and the fruit. And as part of their exercise of growing these things, the teachers explain to them about vitamins and about minerals and the impact of them, and if there's a shortfall, what that means. And then they're cooked. And so it's school cooked meals. Now there's a perception that there's a kind of a health risk because you really should be buying your vegetables from a recognized supermarket chain. But the truth is, these vegetables and fruit are very healthy. There is an overseer who makes sure that all the right kind of soil and all the various elements are. I don't know the details of this because I'm not a technical person, but it's overseen. The local community own it. The ladies come in and cook it themselves. And so you're giving them the right balanced food. They're learning about growing them. They're learning about why it's important to mix in the vegetables. And of course, no child is born loving vegetables, but when they grow them themselves and then they see them cooked and they're eating their own produce, this changes the perception enormously. And it's a cultural shift, and all countries, I come from Ireland, and in the 1950s there was a great belief that bread made from brown flour was very good for you, which it is, but what it also does is it leaches calcium out of your bones. But it took about 10 years before people would accept that was the case. So culture plays a huge role, and helping the children grow their own fruit and vegetables helps deal with that. And also the parents come and they see what's happening. The other big advantage of school feeding, of course, is that none of us can concentrate when we're hungry. And if we don't get the right kind of food...
Especially when one's a child.
Absolutely, absolutely. And if you don't get the right nutrition, there's a potential impact on your mental state, especially in the first, referred to as the first 1,000 days. So all this education, as it filters back through the parents, through the families, we hope will make a cultural shift where people will accept that they need to balance and that it can be tasty. For example, one of the things I find amazing here is pulses. It's not common to get lentils and chickpeas. I happen to love them, but not only are they hugely nutritious, but when you grow them, the plants themselves fix nitrogen in the soil, which reintroduces what's needed in the soil to grow other things. So, lentils and pulses are a win-win, big win-win.
Are a big win-win situation, and especially for countries that are agriculture-based. It's very important for people to understand, to know on what to grow, how to grow, and how much to grow.
Yes.
Because you have to feed the people, the community, the villages, the people around you, your families, other families around you, and to distribute them in the proper shape and quantity.
And that's why we work with the communities. We have a very strong presence in the community. And this is one of the things WFP has over the years tried to achieve, is to be on the ground and to understand what the culture is and try to blend in with what the cultural practices are rather than come in with a solution already decided.
Cultural practices brings me to another thing. I've been to Thatta a couple of years back. I've seen the progress that has been made by the World Food Programme in collaboration with the provincial government there, as far as malnutrition is concerned, or stunting is concerned, or the undernourished mothers and the effect that they had on when they were pregnant, and then on the effect that they had on the children, as far as stunting is concerned, is happened. What kind of progress have you seen in Pakistan? I mean, this is my question. And also, do you see such issues in other countries of the world as well?
I mean, in general, most countries go through the same kind of evolution in terms of recognizing, understanding, and then dealing with issues of malnutrition and acute malnutrition. So there may be details that are different, there may be different timelines, but they're the same. So, for example, people don't recognize stunting because how could you? Stunting is that you're not tall enough to fall within the range expected for your age. But you see a child in the street, you don't know what age the child is. So you don't recognize stunting. And this review I refer to that the government carried out, one of the key things they looked at was stunting, and the figures are shocking, but the great thing is the government has embraced them and said, yes, we're now going to deal with this. And the same with wasting. Wasting is you will be stunted before you're wasted, and wasted means your body mass is not. But we have seen improvements in the areas that we and other UN agencies and governments have been working in. Referring back to what I talked about, the education, we've worked with communities and we've seen the communities embrace it, again, the women more than the men, and they pass the message on. And this is key. It is much more effective for a mother to hear the message from another mother than it is from some guy who's flown in from Ireland.
This dissemination of information, Finbarr, is very important, and I totally agree with you. But how does one do it in areas that are far-flung, in areas where the society is too closed for you to kind of reach to it?
Well, this refers back again to the kind of credibility that WFP is lucky to have here from the work that a lot of people have done over a lot of years. When I go and visit some of these communities, I'm accepted because I'm coming with the recognized symbol of World Food Programme. And we've been with communities during the earthquakes, during the floods, and people don't forget. And World Food Programme is very fortunate. We have very good relationships with the communities, we've very good trusting relationships with the donors, and we have good working relationships with the government. And so that gives us a lot of access, it gives us a lot of ability to influence and to be able to shift money from donors to where it's needed, and to kind of multiply that effect by letting the community identify trainers and teachers and lady health workers and that kind of thing, and then they teach others.
So this is a cycle that goes on. You know, you was talking about donors. One of your biggest donors is the government of Pakistan here. Yes. When it comes to Pakistan. When it comes to the collaboration with the government of Pakistan, when it concerns zero hunger and different other goals, how strong has that partnership been over the years? And what are the expectations that you had, and what are the desires that you still have that need to be implemented as far as that cooperation is concerned?
Well, as you say, Pakistan is the largest host government donor in the WFP world. We're in 83 countries. And that has been wheat. The government has been very generous providing wheat. We use the wheat largely for the relief work, and one hopes that relief work is temporary. Sometimes temporary means 1 year, sometimes it means 5 years. And it has been concentrated in the Fatah region. As you know, the government moved people out of that area. The government has been accommodating a lot of refugees from Afghanistan, although they've now returned. And at one stage,
there still are a number of refugees here.
There are, but a lot have gone back. And at one stage, Pakistan was hosting over 3.5 million refugees. And just as a footnote, you know, in Europe we're whinging when there's a couple of 100,000, and yet I don't think there is much international acknowledgement that the Pakistani people were hosting such a huge number of people and not complaining, not making a big deal out of it.
Exactly.
So yes, we work with the government in that respect, but they're building their own capacity to be able to do this. And our sense is that most of the things the government undertake at that civil service basis is very effective, very competent people. So we really believe that we will change ourselves by 2030. We will have what I call China here instead of Pakistan. We will be working, helping the government broker expertise that they'll provide to other countries that are going through what Pakistan is going through now.
The Afghan refugees brings me to the temporary displaced persons that you have been working in collaboration with the Pakistani governments as well. Your presence in FATA, in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, has been very significant when it comes to providing food to the temporary displaced persons over there in collaboration with the provincial and federal government. Also for the school feeding program, the school enrollment program. How satisfied are you by the success of this endeavor?
Very satisfied thus far. I think there's a lot more work to be done. I think people are beginning to recognize that you have kind of two streams. You have the stream of immediate relief when people return, providing them with 6 months' food, which has been provided by the government. You have other organizations like FAO working with farmers to help them re-establish their livelihoods. We have other donors, and we've been using the food and the cash to provide it to people and giving them jobs, building waterways and building feeder roads, whereas the World Bank and the Asian Development Bank and the Chinese AIIB are providing money to the local government for the big infrastructures to rebuild shops. But our sense is that the short term will be longer than 6 months, and we're asking donors to look at providing money for a longer period of time to ensure people really re-establish their roots in the community. 6 months isn't enough for a farmer to be confident enough that he's going to get the right harvest to be able to feed his family and buy clothes. So we're saying to donors, no, you need to look a little bit longer. 2 years' time, the infrastructure will be in place, so you can create a real economy. It can self-generate with the produce. And there's FAO are doing a lot of exciting things in terms of, for example, providing pine nuts, which is a very nutritious product. So they're looking at things that are necessary in addition to the standard commodities.
All right. So I think that's an important endeavor, and that is something that is a work in progress, as I might say, because it's not ending anytime soon, and it needs to be propagated well and continuously so that the results keep on showing. That's very important, because you see, you might have a good result 1 year or 2 years or 3 years, but at the outset of 5 years, if you don't get the same results, what happens to the SDGs first of all, and then to the people as well that are affected. Speaking of people, disasters are also something that we cannot foresee sometimes. In Pakistan, we've got floods, have had earthquakes. We remember the 2005 earthquake. We remember the other floods that happened in the country as well. Now, the World Food Programme is supporting the government of Pakistan as well as in other partners to enhance their capacity augmentation in the area of disaster risk reduction and disaster risk management. First of all, tell me, what is the difference between disaster risk management and disaster risk reduction?
Well, it's a subtle difference. A disaster risk reduction is when you take definite steps to ensure that the disaster doesn't happen or that it doesn't impact in the manner in which it did. So an example is, if your house was affected by the flooding during the floods, it doesn't make sense to rebuild a house there because chances are it's going to happen again. And Pakistan is, I think, number 6 or 7 in terms of reoccurring natural disasters. Disaster risk reduction means providing plans for what to do when a disaster strikes, so you know exactly what to do, and you don't have to wait that kind of key 48, 72 hours to take action. And part of that is preparing the local authorities and the local community in terms of understanding what it is, understanding the things that they need to bring with them, understanding the risk of water if the water gets contaminated, these kind of things. So you're trying to reduce the impact of risks that you think may be out there. We're working with the government on this. The government has really taken this very, very seriously. They have the federal authority, and each of the provinces have their own provincial authorities, but they're also working down at the district level. The other big disaster that's impacting Pakistan more than most countries is climate change. Of course, this is
that's a global phenomenon.
It is, but unfortunately, Pakistan I think is number 7 in terms of the anticipated impact of climate change. So that means working with farmers to say how they can change their crops, because in a lot of areas traditional crops are no longer producing the harvest that was expected. And again, the government has taken this very seriously.
But we talk about climate change. In that climate change, as you said, it's unpredictable. But sometimes that unpredictability also modifies itself over the years. How does one keep up to date as far as that is concerned?
This is one of the areas that I think a United Nations organization has a lot of value to add, because of course we're collecting data right across the world. We've access to all these, and not just in terms of the changing weather patterns, which is available in the public sector, but also the different things that different countries have tried in relation to this. The problem with risk, if you knew what it was going to be and you had the perfect answer, it would no longer be a risk. But what you try to do is to try and find answers. For example, more weather-resistant crops, for example, but the whole issue of genetically modified food, of course, is a very controversial issue. But that's what governments are working on around the world. They're looking at, again...
As far as genetically modified food is concerned, are you working in tandem with other organizations or other countries to make people understand the dangers?
World Food Programme is not involved in that. We work within whatever the national rules are. We don't take a formal position one way or the other.
But you do help if the help is asked.
Of course, yes. But there are other agencies that are doing that. But the point I'm trying to make is that there's a number of different initiatives trying to identify what are the things that can be done rather than moving people. And I'll come back to my favourite, legumes. Legumes grow with very little water. And it's this kind of thing. And I know my father was from farming stock. It is very difficult to get a farmer to change their ways. They've been doing it for generations. And if the guy in the suit turns up and says, you're doing this all wrong, you need to do that, no one's going to pay attention. So it needs to be culturally sensitive and this kind of thing. But it's...
How do you make culturally sensitive programs for people of countries such as Pakistan? The farmer that is in a remote village in Pakistan, to make him understand that, all right, what you're doing, what you're doing is right, but the way you're doing it is wrong.
You bring members of the local community. You train them and you get them to go back with the message. There's all sorts of cultural subtleties which, no matter how long you've lived in a place, you don't necessarily pick up, and that can suddenly turn somebody off. And the UN in general, World Food Programme in particular, has been very aware of this over the last few years, and so we've integrated more and more, not just national staff, but local staff to try and deal with that.
Next year is going to be a very important year. It's going to be 50 years of the World Food Programme.
That's right.
1968 to 2018.
Yes.
How productive, lucrative has the journey been?
Lucrative?
Lucrative in the sense of helping the people.
Okay. I think it's been a very successful journey for all the partners. Of course, there's been peaks and troughs, as there is in any relationship. I think when I talk about World Food Programme changing its presence here to be one where we're looking at using the expertise in Pakistan for other countries, people kind of say, no, we need you here. But, a successful relationship is one where you do yourself out of a job. And I think World Food Programme, assuming, and we all hope that there will be no very significant disaster.
But there are 5 specific programs that the World Food Programme is shifting its
Yes.
focus to. Tell us a little bit about
Yeah,
that.
again, as I said at the beginning, traditionally we're seen as the people who come in with liners full of food and feeding people, and we still will do that. But we're shifting our program here. The relief bit is only now in the FATA region, and that is expected to decline over the next couple of years. So we're moving into other areas, social protection, working with the Benazir Income Support Group to try and expand the reach of the social protection. We're working on nutrition. This is the primary focus in years 3, 4 and 5 of our plan. Again, working through local, provincial, district and federal authorities to understand how best the nutritional shortfalls can be made up and integrated into government policy so that it continues. We're also looking at working with the government to help them build food systems, for example, cold supply chains where you have a product that needs to be kept cold and these kind of things. So we're moving more and more into technical support, capacity development, and away from the traditional just bringing in oceans of food.
That's great. That's great. And I said a stomach that is well fed in the night or in the day is a person or is a human being that also lives its day properly as it should. And I think a lot of people must be praying or giving you good du'as, as you say, to the World Food Programme, that for all the good work that it's doing in countries such as Pakistan and other countries of the world, to reduce hunger, to reduce malnutrition, to reduce so many of the things that are associated with it. And thanks to organizations such as yours, and I hope that you continue to bring in all that good effort that you're doing since 1968. And inshallah, I hope that 2018 will bring new avenues for the World Food Programme as well, and for its initiatives in countries of Southeast Asia and Pakistan in particular. Finbarr, thank you so very much to have given us the time. And I hope that since the 1 year that you're here in Pakistan, that you've been to a lot of places in Pakistan and you've kind of seen how loving and how affectionate and how warm the people of our country are.
Yes, I have indeed. I'm actually was very pleasantly surprised. People are so nice, so helpful. I love going up the hills, at the back here, the Margala Hills. And the last time I was up there, this group of young lads insisted I sit with them. They shared their water, they shared their biscuits. So thank you very much. And it's a privilege, in fact, to work in an organisation such as World Food Programme. It's nice to get up and know you're going to try and help people every day.
Exactly. And trying to help people, ladies and gentlemen, is what is the main responsibility, one of the main initiatives of the World Food Programme as well. We wish them all the best. That brings us to the end of this episode of Diplomatic Enclave. We'll be back, inshallah, next week, same time, same channel. Take care of yourselves. Allah Hafiz. And thank you, Finbarr.
Thank you. Thank you.